Hey, this is Mike Diercksen from Proactive, and you're listening to the Building Bite Podcast. Tune in as we spotlight our guest, Bret Bush, co-founder and executive vice president at Insight Risk. Our episode today is focused on technology driving the change in underwriting. For more information on this episode and others, please check out the Building Bite at www.buildwithproactive.com.
Welcome to the Building Bite Podcast, a podcast for construction contractors, owners, and insurance professionals where you'll hear from the experts about key topics to help you be successful. I'm Chris Epps, a VP with Proactive, and I'm joined here with my co-host Mike Diercksen, our Manager of Marketing and Business Development. Our guest today is a thought leader in the construction insurance space, Bret Bush. Bret is the co-founder and executive vice president of Insight Risk. Bret, how are you this morning?
I'm good, guys. I hope you're doing well, staying warm. This is a timely podcast because of the weather that is currently going on in the U.S., and we can talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. How are you guys doing?
That it is. Doing very well, Bret. Mike, how about you? How are you this morning?
Great. Trying to stay warm, like Bret said, definitely looking around the country and seeing some negatives. So feeling fortunate to be in at least the positive degrees at this point.
Absolutely. Well, Bret, thank you again for joining the show today. It's a real pleasure to connect with you. Before we dive into our main topic, I was wondering if you could tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your career and how you arrived at Insight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So I think the best way for me to break it down is I spent about a third of my career on the insurance broking side. So I was a broker, we're out there in the world selling insurance, and I worked on commercial. I started in personal lines and worked my way up to commercial. I spent another third of my career running all of the operations for a union general contractor in Chicago. So I've been on the construction side, working on all things insurance, operations, risk management, manpower, all those things. So I understand that side. And then the last third of my career, the most recent, I've been on the insurance company side. I wanted to see what it was like from the insurance company perspective. So I spent the last 6 years or so on the insurance company side from that viewpoint.
Yeah, no, Bret, a wealth of information. We're really excited to have you on today. Diving into the topic, excited to get to it, is technology driving the change in underwriting. And I know you alluded to it a little bit earlier. And if anyone's watching on the YouTube, on the video, you can see Bret's background. So builder's risk with water damage in particular. So if you could just give us a little bit, like 10,000 foot overview of how you see the challenge of builder's risk in underwriting, specifically with water damage, and what you guys are doing to combat that.
Yeah, I was fortunate, as I mentioned, the last 6 years to be on the insurance company side. So at Hartford Steam Boiler Munich Re, on the innovation team there, addressing water damage losses for large insurance carriers. And then 3 years at the Hartford Insurance Company, helping our customers prevent water damage losses. And then the last 2 years here at Insight Risk. And really, when you boil it down, the leading cause of loss in property and construction is water damage losses, and how you can use technology to prevent those losses from happening to those projects, to those customers. That's been my drive for the last 6 years, and it's been extremely successful. It's been extremely challenging, but over those years, we've been able to work out those kinks and figure out which technology, which vendors, how to implement this technology for our customers, and really how impactful it's been for them, not only preventing losses, but in instances like today, where the temperature in many places is sub-zero and wind chills are sub-zero, monitoring those projects. And we have technology on projects that our customers can look at their mobile device and see exactly what's going on at their project at this point in time. And there's a lot of peace of mind around that. So it's really about preventing losses, but also giving our customers a level of comfort to know what's going on at their project when they're not physically there.
Yeah, and I feel like that's certainly an area where all of our listeners can likely relate. I mean, whether they're contractors, brokers, carriers, they all touch that space. It certainly can relate to that. Are there some successes that you could share? Usually we find our listeners definitely can relate to case studies, and given that I know they've all had water losses, water intrusion, water damage, could you share maybe some of the specific successes Insight Risk has had in that arena?
Yeah, really, over the last 4 years, the successes are unbelievable. And when we tell these to people, they're blown away. And when I was at the Hartford, we had a significant number of $1 million plus water damage losses that we were looking at the historical claims data. And so when we started implementing technology, vetting the different vendors, and we were actually able to implement that technology on actual projects that were going on across the United States, over a 2-year period, we were able to reduce severe losses by 95%. And what's even more impressive and what I'm more proud of is we spent about $3 million on technology and services. We were able to prevent $30 million in actual water damage losses that would have occurred on those projects had they not had that technology installed on there. And so that type of ROI in technology is what you're searching for, right? Like if for every dollar we spend, we're going to save 10. That's the sweet spot. And there's been other studies out there, vendor partners of ours and insurance carrier partners of ours with the same numbers. And so we know this technology works. And now it's just a matter of getting out there, getting the word out, and then showing them how it can be done.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with those numbers. 95% reduction in any type of loss. I think most carriers would take that, as would most GCs. Across the board, that sounds pretty good. Something that also jumped out to me when we last spoke, and you were first telling me about this, Bret, you had mentioned that the tech that you guys are developing has life beyond the policy term, which I see as a huge value add. Could you expand a little bit more on that for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of it is we actually, and we were at the Hartford, we took property-based Internet of Things technology and implemented it in construction to see if it would work, and it did. But what's fascinating is oftentimes the property owners will come to us after the construction is completed and ask us if they can keep the equipment and keep the IoT solution post-construction. And we're like, absolutely, this works on property too. And they will convert that over. Even though we at Insight Risk don't currently write property insurance, we're happy to help them with that transition. We actually consult with customers as well on a technology service consulting to help them with their property loss prevention using IoT technology as well. And so that's what we really are excited about is the continuation of this technology post-construction. Because not only does it have great loss prevention capabilities, which that's our primary objective, right, when we're using this technology is to prevent losses, but it has great capabilities in water conservation, which is becoming more and more important every day. We often say water is the new gold, and it has some operational efficiencies that can be gained as well, both for the construction and the property owner post-construction. So we see this as a very, very long-term solution that's going to save water, prevent losses, and help them run their properties better as well.
Writing down that comment that water is the new gold, especially speaks true to me. I, first-time home buyer, and we had a runny faucet, and it was certainly gold out the door for me. So
yes,
just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But Bret, so this is it's a dynamic offering, right? And it's certainly appealing to a wide audience here. One thing that Chris and I have been seeing a lot on the podcast is it feels like more and more you've got these technology companies, they have this tech that's working for them, they're very passionate, and it's kind of allowing them to enter into the underwriting space. And I guess one of the questions, you've been around the industry, various different sides of the table. Why now? Right? What do you think there is about the industry in this moment that's so receptive to this? And I guess the knock on insurance and construction has always been that they're slow to change, slow to adapt. But it does feel like this is picking up. It's something that, you guys have created here at Insight. So yeah, is there something you think that's kind of leading the market to shift towards these tailored solutions?
Yeah, no, great question. I think, there's 3 obstacles to construction and anybody else adopting any type of technology, but really if we focus specifically on IoT technology for construction and even property is the 3 obstacles are who's going to pay, right? Like this technology can get expensive. So who pays is a big question. The other one is which technology, right? Like you can Google this stuff and get, 1,000 hits on technology. So now it's very overwhelming, which technology. They're not going to try, 10, 15, 20 different types of technology and vendors like we were able to. And then the last one, which is sort of our secret sauce and where we really pride ourselves in our white glove service at Insight Risk Technologies, is how the heck do I implement this, right? Like now I have the technology. How does this work? How do I get it on site? How do I get it installed? How do I monitor it? All that. And that's what we do, right? So what's interesting is this technology is becoming mandatory or required or highly recommended if you want to get insurance. And sometimes if you can even get the insurance, they'll require this. So that's pushing people to implement this or at least check it out and find out. And that's when they come to us and say, hey, can you help us? And we're like, absolutely, we can. I think the other thing that I think is really critical, and this is maybe the last 5 years, is there's so much more pressure to complete these projects on time, right? So in the past, you might have said, a contractor, owner, developer might have said, well, this is why I have insurance. When I have a loss, it's going to help me get back to where I was before the loss. That's the premise of insurance. With the supply chain demands now, might not be able to get the materials to repair the damage. And okay, maybe you are able to get the materials, but now the subcontractor that you need to repair this damage and extend this project an extra 2, 3, 4, 6 months, he's like, no, I can't do this. I've got another project that's starting, after this project is completed that I've already committed to. I can't stick around here for another 2 or 3 or 6 months and repair this damage and then complete the project. I'm moving on. So I think that pressure is like, okay, how can we prevent these losses, these damages, these disruptions from happening? And can we use technology to help us do that? And I think that's where this is all driving towards. It's going to be mandatory within the next year or two. And so we're ahead of the curve. We're getting out there. We're implementing this. We're showing how easy it is, showing how much we can help them do this. And that's where the success is going to come when it does become mandatory, much like fire sprinklers were, how many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, whenever that was. You're seeing it. And that's what's happening now.
Yeah, and that certainly rings true with us. I mean, we're seeing a lot of those, avoidance is definitely huge right now, because you're right. You got supply chain disruption, you got inability to get materials, you got labor issues, even if you got the right sub, and we're seeing those manifest in default claims all over the place for that very reason. It's just not having the time to come back and finish the work when you have a catastrophic loss like that is just exponentially detrimental to the project. And then you got financing constraints on top, and all the monetization that builds on top of that, and it's just can be a disaster. So being able to avoid it to the scale you're talking about sounds really, really attractive, Bret.
Yeah, thank you. And listen, we don't currently write wood frame builder's risk insurance. We have aspirations to do so, and we're working towards that as hard as we possibly can. It's a very challenging market right now, but now you've got to prevent fire as well. And we have some of the most innovative IoT solutions to prevent fire, but we combine that with our water damage. And now you've got, a wood frame project protected both from water damage, which is still the leading cause. It's not fire, but it's still the leading cause, but also to implement that in collaboration with the security IoT solution to help prevent fires. And it's the same concept as you're saying, Chris, exactly, is like, these are problems. We can't have these problems. How do we use technology to prevent these from happening? And listen, we're not saying technology is the end all be all. It's a tool. We know this is a people business. We understand that. And that's why we work very closely with the people that are responsible, owner, developer, general contractors, subcontractors, everyone, all of the stakeholders. We show them how this technology is going to help them prevent this from happening on their project. And they're very appreciative of that. And so to your point, right, like we can't have these projects be disrupted and cause a delay because of all these issues.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are really listening to what the market needs and kind of what they're really demanding at this point. So,
Yeah, thank you so much. Because we did do a lot of customer research before we stood up Insight Risk Technologies. To your point, we went and listened to brokers, we went and listened to the carriers, and most of all, we went and listened, to the contractors and owner developers of where are the pain points. And we said we have a solution for this that nobody else is really providing, and that's how we came about. You're exactly right, Chris. Thank you.
fantastic. Well, building on that thought, we typically like to leave our audience with 3 takeaways coming out of our episodes. I think you probably touched on some of those already, but what do you think those should be relative to this topic?
Yeah, in no particular order. I think one I've already stated, and that is, this is going to be mandatory before long. So you might as well dip your toe in the pool now. And find a partner, I think, is the best thing. Is don't try to go it alone, right? Whether it's Insight Risk Technologies or a vendor partner or your insurance broker, whoever that is, you've got to have someone to kind of go along on this ride with you, and someone that's knowledgeable about it is most helpful, obviously. And then, don't be afraid to try different technologies. Don't go all in on one technology. Try a couple different, sort of a bake-off mentality, right? We're going to try this one and this one and this one. We're going to see, which one works the best, which company and technology is easiest to implement, from a security, maintenance standpoint. And then, be prepared. I think as you do this is considered being very proactive in the insurance world. You let your broker know, let your underwriter know, so that they can reward you with hopefully better premiums, lower deductibles, better terms and conditions for making the investment and the commitment to being proactive. You are a better risk for it. So you should be rewarded for that. And I think those are the 3 things. Take that away and run with it and help offset some of the cost and commitment and resources that it does take to implement this technology.
Yeah, Bret, the thing that we come back to a lot, there's a through line with a lot of these episodes, and you nailed it. It's a people business. I mean, these are all tools, these are all efficient ways to mitigate risk, but ultimately it comes down to people. And I like how you mentioned, advocate for yourself, talk about that investment, work with your carriers and your brokers and your partners in this and say, listen, we're doing our part. What can we do there? So definitely a dynamic solution that way. Additionally to the takeaways, we like to say, what's an action item, right? If I'm listening to this episode, whether I'm a broker, a GC sub, you name any stakeholder here, and I'm going, this is making a lot of sense, Brett. I like what we're talking about. Where do I go? What do I start? What would be that first step in your mind towards looking at a solution like this, or figuring out what the next step is?
Yeah, it sort of relates back to the items we just talked about. Is, don't go to, call us, right? So self-promotion, one, we're happy to help. We're happy to be transparent. We're happy to share what we've learned and what we know with you. So call me at Insight Risk Technologies. We're happy to be a resource for you. And that goes for you guys too. If you have questions, if you want to do a deep dive, like, let's get together and talk about it. We're happy to do that. But find that partner so you don't have to do this alone. It's a lonely road. And listen, construction is not the most active in adopting technology. They're sort of like, they want to be the third one at bat, right? They don't want to be the leadoff hitter. And we can help make that comfort level raise up a little bit so that you don't feel so blind and so lost as you're going through that process of trying to figure out what you want to do.
I feel like that's generally just good life advice, Bret, but certainly in the technology space, even more applicable. Before we let you go, we typically like to hit our guests with a few rapid fire questions from Mike and myself, but I'll lead off there. What is it that gets you most excited about what you guys are doing in the builder's risk space right now?
Well, yeah, thank you. So certainly expanding into the wood frame business and then into the property, right? Because we can have a huge impact on all of those lines of insurance. And listen, I've done IoT technology solutions for workers' comp and general liability lines of business. So we'll eventually get there too. But it's really about just expanding our footprint, right? And affecting more people and preventing losses. This is one of those scenarios that's rare in insurance where it's a win-win-win for everybody. It's a win for us. It's a win for our carrier partners. It's a win for the broker because they're bringing something unique to their client, and it's a win for the client that everything goes smoothly. They don't have problems. So that's what we're really excited about winning at every level. And our carrier partners, the more success we have, I think the more support we're going to get from them, and the more we can expand and affect more projects and more properties and more workers as well.
Yeah, Brett, what about, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but when it comes to insurance and tech adoption, where do you think people are struggling with, with bringing on new technologies? You mentioned, spreading it out, the bake sale type approach, but
Yeah.
what do you think it is that's kind of holding people back?
It's those three legs of the stool, right? So who's going to pay? You got to find someone to help you offset some of that cost, whether it's broker, carrier, vendor, customer, whoever that might be. And then also, which technology? There's so many options out there.
Right.
I think those are the biggest hurdles, like that people have to overcome. And listen, the new generation is much more comfortable with this tech than the older generation that's going to be retiring soon, as we all know. And so this technology is second nature to them. So if you can get it early, they'll run with it. They're not afraid to try. They're not afraid to use technology. So I just think that there are a lot of options, and you've got to narrow down those options to make it a little bit more digestible.
Yeah, actually, kind of dovetailing into that, Brett, you've got such a great background and a wealth of knowledge and experience. If you could leave a professional tip for our viewers, what's something that you've learned along your way through your career that you would impart to the listeners today?
Wow, great question. That's deep. So again, I think, define your objectives. Our objective was to prevent losses. Other companies, other stakeholders might have different objectives, but once you define those objectives, don't be afraid to take a little bit of leap of faith. There's a lot of help out there. Companies like us, the vendors that we work with are great. But it's, again, you've got to take that leap and find people to do it with you. Don't try to go it alone. I know I keep harping on that, but that's really the hardest part, is how the heck do we do this? Find someone that can help you do it.
Nice. Yeah. And so, Brett, lastly here, before we let you go, this is the Building Bite podcast. Stands for your building insurance technology with the experts, and you are today's expert. So we always like to ask our guests, what are you taking a bite out of today? So I know you're in Austin, Texas. Is it barbecue? Is it something out there? Like, what's the local fare?
Yeah, no, what a great question. So I am on my way to head to Houston. I've got a couple of big projects down in Houston where it's a little warmer than it is in Austin today. It is 20 degrees today. So we're battling. There's going to be some frozen pipe claims for people that don't have our technology on their projects. I apologize to you. On your next project, come to us. But there's a great, I believe, one of the best barbecue places in Austin that I've experienced is called Rudy's. And what's cool about Rudy's is they're in like a gas station. So, I can fill up the car with some gas. I can grab me some Rudy's for the road, and I will be munching on Rudy's on the 2.5-hour drive to Houston here in just a few hours. And I'll be very happy about that.
I feel like it's a universal truth when it comes to barbecue that the more unassuming the location looks, the better the barbecue. Like you want a shack, you want something barely with the door hanging off, but like that is the best food. Don't give me the polished restaurant. Give me the gas station. Give me the shack out back. That's like, damn, this is where you go.
Yeah, when I tell people I'm taking them to barbecue that come and visit me in Austin, which happens a lot because it's a great city to visit, I say, well, we're going to go get barbecue for sure. And I take them and we pull into a gas station. They're like, oh, do you need to get gas? I said, no, we're going to get some barbecue. And we go in and have barbecue. And they're like, this is the best barbecue I've ever had. I said, we're sitting in a gas station. So it's a unique experience on top of fantastic barbecue. So.
Excellent.
Well, I'm glad you said barbecue and not sushi. Gas station sushi is not the same. So. Well, Brett, thank you for chatting with us today. If our listeners are looking for some of that advice and some of that, looking to partner, particularly after some of these pipe bursts that may be coming up here with all this cold weather we're having, where can they find you? LinkedIn, email, telephone? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm a social media user, so you can definitely ping, Bret Bush on LinkedIn anytime. Also, please visit our website. We've got some good information on there, even a cool little graphic video at insightrisktech, and it's TEC, not TECH, so insightriskTech.com. Great information there, and feel free to reach out to me at any point in time at either of those places.
Thank you again for your time. Definitely appreciate it, and can't wait to have you back on as you guys continue to evolve in this tech space.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for the time and all the insightful questions. Really enjoyed it. I love your podcast. I'm a dedicated listener, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have coming up in the future.
Awesome.
Thank you, Brett.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you for listening to The Building Bite. This podcast has been brought to you by Proactive. Check us out on thebuildingbite.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media for all future The Building Bite news and updates. You can also find us on your favorite apps, including Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Amazon. If you have ideas for episode topics that we should cover on the show, or you know somebody who would be a perfect guest, let us know at connect@thebuildingbite.com.